Assalamu alaikum. How are you doing?
Well, alhamdulillah, brother, doing all right. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm pretty good. It's been a minute since we've seen each other, honestly.
Yeah, it's been, I think, maybe a year, maybe more.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I remember
Mhm.
last time I think I saw you at like Displays Budget, I think.
Where
Yeah, I
was
think so.
that?
The Displays Budget, like Potter Budget.
Oh, yeah, sure, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think well over a year ago. So you're in California now?
yeah, I'm in California now.
MashaAllah, that's good to hear, brother.
How's the weather in Chicago?
It's it's turning cold. Um,
Turning cold?
Today it's like 41 degrees outside,
Yeah.
and yesterday was like 50, then it was like 60 the day before that. So it's getting colder every day.
Oh, oh, yeah. I remember that about Chicago, the weather.
Yeah.
Uh, what's actually funny is that your shirt, like, it actually reminds me of Mike Tyson's shirt. I think he had that.
Oh,
Pop.
this is his shirt. It's really it's all really contributed to him. Whenever you see someone wearing this, it doesn't matter
Yeah.
what size or color or style, it's contributed from him, from Mike Tyson, from when he once
Yeah.
wore it. I think he wore it maybe once, and then it became infamous. Since so, yeah, my sister gave me this as my birthday gift a couple years ago. I just don't really wear it, but I thought it might be a cool occasion to do it.
Oh, really? I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, of course, it's obvious that Mike Tyson was like an inspiration to you.
Oh yeah, yeah, 100%. He's also a spiritual man. You know, he drops a lot of gems. He says a lot of cool things, things that you can relate to, things that just catch you in awe. He's a very inspiring man altogether. And obviously, I didn't grow up around the 80s. I was born in the 90s, but there's just so much that he's left behind for future generations to look into and look up to, and and be a means of inspiration for many generations to come. Yeah, I think Mike Tyson's a real guy. He's as real as they come. He doesn't hide himself, doesn't hide any sides of himself. On what he is what you see, Yeah, and I
Well, that's
respect that. I like,
100% true. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I've also looked up to him for a while, especially like not just as a fighter, but like just as an
mhm,
individual as
exactly,
well. And I
exactly.
like how he's
Yeah.
evolved as a person as well, and he has matured as a person as well.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure, for sure. Yeah. Everyone has their own stories, and I just remember my dad talking to me like about him, saying that when he embraced Islam, Sunni Islam, not Nation of Islam, he actually went to um, perform pilgrimage, and he ended up crying like a baby. And this is when he wasn't so mature yet, he wasn't so old yet, and but you could tell he always had that soft side in him,
Yeah.
a good side, if you will, in him, that soft side in him, and he shows you how much of a human he is. And I think a lot of people that are that are big and macho minded, they could take a lesson from that. It doesn't matter
That's
how
true.
big or strong or bad you are, you should have a soft spot. If you don't have one, you should have a soft spot in your heart somewhere.
It's
Yeah,
true. Yeah.
that's what
It's always it's like a good balance. Like you gotta know when you should be strong and when it's okay to,
being
I think, feel
strong
weak.
is not an option to me. You have to be strong.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
then as you're being strong, you want to make sure you're not giving away your heart. Your heart's not so hard that you're just all you are is just hardness now. You want to
Yeah.
be
You
strong,
don't
but
want to
you
be
want to
heartless.
some spot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's true. You don't want to be heartless at the same time. It's like a
Mm-hmm.
good balance because if you're too hard, then it's like you're kind of like robotic in a way, and it's like
Yeah, you're
you have
pretty
no
much.
you have no emotions, right?
You have no
It's obvious.
heart and you're dead. So
Yeah, it's very true.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's 100% true. You know, it's actually crazy because like even his coach, like obviously like who inspired him like a lot, Mato, like
Mm-hmm.
he talks about like sometimes like the worst thing a man can do is like becoming too civilized. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's kind of interesting because I was like,
That
I
is
didn't understand what he meant by that
mm,
at first, but then he
right.
explained it, and he's like,
Mm-hmm.
when you are essentially too civilized, you become too soft.
I see.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
yeah. Which, in a way, it's like that is kind of true because it's like, you become too, I guess, in a way, spoiled in a way, right?
I guess you become too much of a civilian, more of a community man, less of a warrior, less of someone who's really striving for something great.
Yeah,
I think you just being, playing it safe, being too much of a community man, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I guess it would make you a little quote unquote soft in that way. Hardship is good. Going through struggles is good. Having a big goal, a big ambition, chasing after it, no matter how hard or scary it is, it's good. And I think that's really what he's implying. You can't be too civilized. You can't be too calm and relaxed, because those people get ran down by people that aren't so much better than them. At the end of the day, you want to be able to stand up for yourself and your communities and your women and children. So yeah, I would agree with that. You can't be too civilian. You can't be too warrior like either. And there should be a fine balance in between.
Yeah, that's true.
Mike Tyson
And
has achieved time.
yeah, no, that's true. And like one of the things I like is, I'm sure you know who Frost Zahabi is, right? Like USP's
Oh
coach.
yeah.
Yeah. I
Mhm.
remember he said this, and it was actually really good. He said
Mhm.
a perfect balance isn't 50-50. It's more like 60-40 or 70-30. You kind of need a
Mhm.
bit more of something and a little less
Mm.
of something, but you need that
Mm.
balance. Right? Because I feel like
Mm.
when you say balance, some people might think literally 50-50,
50-50.
but that's not like a
You're
really
right.
good sometimes. Like you
I
need a
agree.
little bit more of something than something else. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah,
And,
I
and
agree.
yeah, because it's like you want to be good, right? But you don't want to be like a person that like everyone can just step on and like they just
Oh yeah.
essentially disrespect you, right? And they just
Yes, that's
essentially you're a
true.
pushover, right? And then you also don't want
That's
to be too hard, right? And then it's like no one is really your
oh.
friend, and you're just so antisocial, right?
Mhm.
And it's like,
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So
yeah,
you do need that balance, like a good
it's
balance.
very important. You don't want to be a victim to people's narcissism, to people's egotistical behavior that affects your mental health or your physical health in a bad way. There's so many people out there. There's so many research topics being done today on the topics of narcissism and emotional manipulation, and how people could just run you down very easily because you're a victim in their eyes. And it's good not to be a
Sure.
victim. And it's good not to be on the extreme side, not to be a narcissist and taking everybody as your victim, and
Yeah.
both sides could learn a little from each other. Um,
Yeah.
you should pick up the aggression if you feel like you are being a victim, and you should tone down. You should really tone down your aggression and come more soft if you feel like you're pushing people away that are supposed to be your friends and they're supposed to
Yeah.
be people you can count on. Now they can't even talk to you about certain things, or they can't even count on you, let alone be your friend, because you just push them away with your manipulative, narcissistic tendencies. So, you
No,
know,
that's 100% true. Because
that's,
it's like you're like walking on
mhm.
eggshells with them, right? It's like
It's
you got to be
horrible.
careful what you
Very
got to say.
ugly. Yeah.
It's like
Yeah. I mean, go on.
I don't know. I was just saying it's just a very weird situation to be in, and like most people don't want to be in that, right? So
It's tricky because they don't show who they are. When there's a narcissist out there, he doesn't really tell you I'm this, obviously, because nobody's going to be his friend. Then he really needs people to be his friends. He can't operate without people with him. Stuff like that. So I think what he should do, what any person should do, should learn how to be grounded within your own self. Just be grounded by yourself. Learn how to be at peace with yourself. Doesn't matter if you're lonely. Doesn't matter if you're filled with company and you're stimulated by conversations and stuff. For introverts, for extroverts, for narcissists, for empaths, people of all types. I think you should learn to ground yourself before you go out in the real world and even make a friend. Because what is a friend at the end of the day? Just someone you can really count on. But how can you count on somebody else without, counting on yourself first? You need to be so grounded within your morals and values and your discipline and your lifestyle. I think that you should just be a representative of yourself. You should represent yourself when you're going out there, let alone have somebody else tell you who you are. You don't want to become an extension of another person because you're just stroking his ego, and now you're a part of his game and his narcissism, because you're just an extension of somebody else when you are your own individual person that God has created equally as the narcissist. But he doesn't feel that way. He feels he's superior in some way. So you can't do nothing
sure.
about it, man. You got to play gray rock. You got to give them one word answers, and just be minimal contact with them and pray for them and make sure you don't carry any bad vibes for anybody. Really, it's hard, man. But you got to
It's
protect
true.
protect yourself at the end of the day, and
Yeah.
and yeah, I think you should love everyone, love people, and but sometimes you might just have to love them from a distance, and I think that's what I'm currently
It's
learning right
true.
now.
Yeah. No, that's 100% true. And one thing I liked that you mentioned is, like you mentioned the both extremes. And what
Hmm.
one quote I heard is that the opposite of an extreme is also an extreme,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So It's like, a lot of people they'll be at one end of the spectrum, but
Mm-hmm.
really it's like, again, like not 50-50 balance, but maybe you might need to lean one side a bit more, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, I agree.
You know, yeah, no, 100%. I remember, it's actually funny that you actually did inspire me to do wrestling. Yeah, yeah, in
Oh,
high school, I remember. Yeah, it
I,
was actually,
um,
yeah, I feel like like, that strength that it gives you, it actually does help a lot, just in life in general, honestly.
so you wrestled in high school after we started hanging out at first?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because
I actually
you were
did.
young. You were in high school. I think you were like 15 years old, something like that. And I was like
Yeah,
maybe like 18 or 19. I'm 27 now, so this was like
really? You were
I
18
think
back
it's.
then?
I'm sorry.
You were 18 back then?
Um, I was around 19. Yeah, 19
Oh,
years
okay.
old.
Okay. Okay.
I just got out of high school myself a few years prior to that. High school is where I started wrestling. It was the only thing I knew. I didn't know how to play basketball that well. I used to love playing football just because of the tackle, the wrestling aspect of it. Other than that, I just took wrestling really seriously, and yeah, I'm very thankful for it. And when I started to become a little religious and started to pray, I found out it's one of the practices of the beloved prophet. May peace be upon him. So that inspired me furthermore to pursue in wrestling, and not just wrestling, combat sports. Because I feel like if I'm pursuing one thing and not the other, in some way, shape, or form, I'm limiting myself and my potential capabilities, and that's not something I want to do. So I love wrestling. I respect it, and I am very thankful that it has opened doors for me to seek other combat sports.
I like that. I like that. Yeah, it's true. Because I mean, like obviously, you do practice like MMA as well, just as I
Hmm.
do, right? So, you can obviously relate to this, and it's like, wrestling is kind of. I've always seen wrestling as like the mediator between like the two worlds, striking and the grappling. Because it's like,
Hmm.
of course, like you want to take it to the ground, you have to use your wrestling, right?
Hmm.
There really isn't anything else you can do, right? And
Hmm.
then for wrestling, and if you want to keep it standing, you again have to use the wrestling. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's a very important discipline, right? And it's most, at least in America, it's mostly done in like at schools, right? Right. It's not really, there aren't really that many like adult wrestling clubs, right?
Hmm.
But I do, so like it's like when you do wrestling, it kind of does give you the edge in just combat sports in general, you know?
Yeah, that's some people are in denial of that, and some people are still very narrow-minded. They're like, no, Taekwondo is the only way, or boxing's the only way, or wrestling's the only way. I don't even think wrestling's the only way. Does it give you an edge? Yeah, it does, because a lot of people didn't grow up wrestling back in the
Yeah.
day, and today a lot of people are catching up to it. You don't have to be from Dagestan to be a good wrestler. You don't have to be from the mud of Pakistan or India to be a good wrestler. You could be a good wrestler where you're at, because it's so um, propagated today and practiced because of MMA. I feel like MMA is really, especially within the last like 6, 7 years, wrestling and jiu-jitsu within the States has really, well, wrestling has always been a part of MMA and martial arts in America, but jiu-jitsu and these other combat sports, I feel like have really skyrocketed. And we're not so much big on just wrestling anymore, but we're definitely improving in other martial arts as well. If you go 20 years back, I doubt you could even find a jiu-jitsu gym so easy as you could
Yeah.
today. There's one here, there's one there, there's Gracie there, there's so many great gyms around us now today. The access is completely drastically different than how it was, I would say maybe like 20, 25 years ago.
Yeah, no, that's 100% true. Good. Yeah, no, that's 100% true. Because it's like, yeah, people do have that. I don't know. They ride like, maybe because they come from that background, they might ride that coattail of a martial art, right? Whether it's taekwondo
Hmm.
or boxing or wrestling, or jiu-jitsu. It's like like a lot of people ask, what's the best martial art? And I say, that's
Hmm.
the wrong question to ask
It
nowadays.
is.
Maybe in
Yep.
1993 that would have made sense.
Hmm.
But I feel like a better question is, what are the best techniques in martial arts? You know what I mean? Like I feel like
Hmm.
that's a more better question.
Yeah.
What are the most
Yeah.
practical techniques that you can use and emulate them into like an actual fight rather than, oh, which martial art? Because that answer
Hmm.
doesn't really exist anymore. You know what I mean? Like,
It's a very I feel like it's a very vague question, you
yeah,
know, and you can only give a vague answer to that. It's like saying, "Oh, is it karate?" And karate is just one word. But would that mean that it could defeat any other style? Now, I would say it's more of the practitioner behind the style. Doesn't matter
yeah,
if you're Taekwondo. Doesn't matter if you're, you know, some people like to rip on like Aikido and stuff like that. Some people rip on modern day Taekwondo even. It's not about modern day or old school Taekwondo or Aikido or wrestling. It's about the practitioner behind it, and it's
yeah,
about how skillful can he use that when it comes to an actual form of combat. Is he really successful in using the skills that he's acquired? Now you'll see that in America we practice mainly for martial arts, especially when I walked in my first training facility at Midwest Training Center in 2018. I was only 22 years old. They still are very big on Muay Thai, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, and boxing. And every day they would just do straight wrestling. The next day they would do straight Muay Thai. Then they would do straight jiu-jitsu. And then one day they would just do straight MMA sparring. But if you look at the world, the spectrum, the whole spectrum, go to Pakistan, you go to Asia, you go to Japan, you go to China. There's wushu, there's sanda, there's bundo, there's karate, there's kyokushin karate, even karate. There's like different versions of karate. So there, it goes like way deep. You know, the martial arts that we have around the world is just too many to count. And for me to say, oh, all you need is just Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu, or all you need is just wrestling and boxing, it's a little narrow-minded because you could find someone from one championship who's like an amazing wushu sanda fighter who's never stepped in a Muay Thai ring, who's never stepped on a wrestling mat, and he could come and maybe finish you within the first 30 seconds because all he knows is wushu sanda. And you know, wushu sanda is very much kickboxing.
yeah.
I don't know too much
I've seen
specifically about it.
some actual like fights of it. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I
well,
do like.
I went to Pakistan. A lot of those guys there, I'm sure it's the same in India. Because these countries are in Asia. A lot of these martial arts, they get those rather than obviously American wrestling. They're not going to get American
Yeah.
boxing, American wrestling. They're going to get even their grappling is like kind of not really there yet. They have a face of it, but it's not really there yet. Maybe the next 10 years, I think I'm talking about Pakistan. I'm not sure about India. Maybe the next 10 years, 15 years. We'll have a better face of jiu-jitsu. We'll have Gracie gyms there, and 10 planets
I
maybe.
do
Maybe
think they
Pakistan.
have a wrestling, but yeah, in terms of jiu-jitsu, probably
Yeah.
not too. Yeah.
Traditionally speaking, wrestling has always dominated the subcontinent, India and
Yeah.
Pakistan, and it's
Yeah.
always dominated amongst our people. And but we've lost pride in that. Even our MMA fighters don't really train mud wrestling anymore. It's a dying sport,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
I
I
was.
don't want to say that because there's a lot of villages that still actively practice wrestling, mud wrestling. And if you simply Google them, YouTube them, see what they're doing, single legs, double legs, you know, they're doing every folk style move you can name. You've practiced, you've trained. It's nothing new. It's nothing out the
It's
ordinary.
true.
But these guys,
Yeah.
their diets are very humble. They're eating like lentils. They're eating vegetables. They're eating bread. They're eating rice. They're eating fish. Most of the time, they catch it themselves. And they're not. They don't. They can't even afford a junk food diet like KFC or McDonald's or pizzas
Yeah.
every day. And when you're in these foreign countries and you have American dollars from experience, you have so much access to like live an unhealthy, unsanitary lifestyle for yourself. And these guys can't even afford that in the first place, and that's where they're just like naturally stronger because of their natural diets. And I think there's a lot of martial artists on that side of the world, in Pakistan and India, that are undiscovered. So Brave picks them up. One championship picks them up. The UFC is like a long shot for them right now because of
Yeah.
passport issues, and they're like 7,000 miles away. But maybe in the future you might see some changes,
You
God
know what's
willing.
actually funny is that you mentioned about mud wrestling is I actually was lucky enough, like when I did travel to India, I was lucky enough to actually practice that over there. And
Yeah.
you know, one thing I remember like there were certain like techniques like that they taught me and I was able
Uh-huh.
to teach them as well. And like some of their training methods. And I was like, you know, at first it was like a lot of calisthenics. You know what I mean? Like a lot of
Oh yeah,
calisthenics.
body weight exercises. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, just like wrestling in the mud, it was like it was kind of different than just wrestling on the mat because
Yeah, I've never done it. I've never done it. I've always
it's
wanted
like
to.
you have to be a bit more aware because the dirt can get in your
Mm,
eyes, right? So
dude, yeah,
you have to rely a bit more on
in
your
your mouth, on your
instincts.
tongue, you're biting it as you're wrestling.
Yeah.
I mean,
So it's like
it's
you have to
probably not.
rely on your instinct a bit more than just
I can't imagine your average American or you know, a Western kid going there, even if he's from Pakistan or India, and and doing things like that and finding joy out of it. I personally could because I've never done it and I want to.
Yeah.
And you yourself are a martial artist yourself, so you would take joy in that. But I think
Yeah.
for the average person, that's like way too gross, maybe. Even though there's nothing gross about it, it's just mud. You know, you're made out of it, and it's part of the
Yeah.
ground. It's part of the
No, I
earth.
mean
It's
it's
just earth.
also like they actually like it's not just regular mud too. It's like they actually like describe the process to me. It's like it's
Okay.
mixed with a bunch of things like milk
Oh, okay.
apparently and like
Really?
yeah, and I think even like sand and like a bunch of it's like purified stuff, water.
So they
I don't
fertilize
remember
it.
all the ingredients that they mentioned, but like
Hmm.
it's like a bunch of things mixed. It's not just mud. You know what I
That's
mean?
very interesting. That's very. I
Yeah.
never knew
That's
they
like
manually make. So they pretty much manually do this. They make like an arena or like not an arena, but like a mat of their own out of mud. And I never knew that they would involve milk and stuff like that. That's pretty cool to
yeah.
hear. And that actually does sound more favorable now. That because they're sticking true to their tradition, and you have to respect that, you know. And
Yeah.
see,
No, it's different now.
there's an Indian heavyweight champion in one, Arjun Bulla, and his background's wrestling, but I don't even think his background's mud wrestling. He's from Canada, and
Oh.
see, there's a lot of Canadian Indian fighters. I think I've yet to see like a purebred. I know Ritu Pogat is there in one championship. She's an Olympian wrestler. She's actually one fine example of what I'm looking for here when it comes to someone who grew up in like a village in India, started mud wrestling. Do you know Ritu Pogat? She's a one fighter.
Yeah.
She's
You know what's funny? I was actually talking about this with a friend yesterday. Like
yeah.
literally
What?
funny enough. About her actually.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, she's good, man. She came in strong, 8-0. It's not to knock on her or anything. I know she said something about Pakistan, like, but for you to be such a high level athlete, you should just like not even involve politics, and because you have fans on both sides. I was a huge fan of hers. Keyword was because she said some sentimental statements about Pakistan. It just kind of turned me off from it. I'm not going to get into that for the sake of this podcast, but I do respect her from a martial arts standpoint, and she did come in undefeated at one championship. And I've watched the movie Dungle with Amir Khan, and it
Oh yeah, I've
portrays their
watched that one too.
sisters.
Yeah.
It's my favorite Indian movie. It has no
Honestly,
love
same.
to it whatsoever. It's straight to the point. It's very,
Yeah.
I think it's very badass. The whole movie's very badass.
Yeah.
She happens to be their little sister. They're all Commonwealth champions in wrestling. She happens to
Yeah.
be the small sister that made it to MMA. And that's
Oh
amazing to
really?
see. I'm still a fan. I might not hold her in high respects like outside of the octagon, but if we're talking MMA, I'm definitely a fan of Ritu. And I've tuned into her last fight. She lost, and before that, she lost to Stamp Fairtex. Now, when you're too much wrestling mindset, that was my point. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you Randy Couture, Brock Lesnar, you would have a great edge on people
Yeah.
who maybe wrestled very little in their lives, and whether in Brazil or any other country in the world. Now you see how people are picking up a lot of different martial arts to counter that type of stuff because they're tired of being bullied. Guys like Ben Askren went from America to one championship, went 20-0 in MMA, won championships all over the world before he came to the UFC and lost and got knocked out by Masvidal. But before all
Yeah.
that, he's doing great because of his wrestling. You know, wrestling has always, I guess, held some sort of a flag bearer in the sport in the beginning stages of it. But I think it's slowly, or rather fast, it's changing. It's evolving fast because Ritu,
Yeah.
as highly credentialed as she is as a wrestler, she's an Olympic champion, by the way, and she's coming in losing to Stab Fairtex to an armbar. It kind of makes me feel like, is she really doing her jiu-jitsu like that, like she should be doing? Or she's
Yeah.
so hard-headed on wrestling, this is all I need. Because that's a very old-school mentality of MMA, and it could catch up with you. You might win your first, like, even 10 fights you might win, but you might find that one guy that specifically has dedicated his style to counter that style so he can make his striking style work or something like that, or his other style work. And now you're going to meet that guy. Like Cody Garbrandt and Dominic Cruz, I guess, comes to mind. Cody said that he used to watch Dominic Cruz as he was in high school, couldn't even fight in the UFC yet, wasn't even a pro fighter yet, and he used to look up to Dominic
Yeah.
Cruz in a way that he wanted to challenge him. That's something he worked on to counter his style all these years. That when Dominic finally met him, and mind you that Dominic Cruz was like, I believe, on a many fight win streak. He only lost to Faber in like the WEC
Yeah.
days, and he's never lost since. And he was on a streak, on like a multiple win streak, a double-digit win streak, when Cody Garbrandt came and just styled on him for the whole fight, because that's someone that studied his style and studied how to counter his style for so many years. You're going to find that with a bunch of high-credentialed wrestlers. Henry Cejudo came in an era where people were already evolving. not to say that he couldn't wrestle people, but Henry Cejudo was also a Golden Gloves champion in boxing. And so is Daniel Cormier. So they're not
Was he
just.
actually?
I'm sorry.
Oh, he actually was a Golden Glove boxing
He was a
champion.
Golden Glove champion. I might be wrong. He might have been a Silver Glove champion or a Golden Glove champion, but he was somewhat of a champion in boxing. Daniel Cormier was a Golden Glove champion in boxing. He knocked out Stipe with those hands. And
Oh, really? Okay. I
you
actually was
know,
not aware of that.
these guys are Olympians, man. So they didn't stop at wrestling. They went up, but that's what kind of gave them their success in MMA too. It's not to like be so single-minded on wrestling and feel like, oh, it's just my sport. It's going to beat all sports. No, that's a very arrogant mindset. I think
Yeah.
these guys had to get humbled. Henry Cejudo had to get humbled a few times before he applied his Olympic style, and now he could call himself Triple Chi. You know what he says. Triple C. I'm sorry. He could call himself a champ, an Olympic champion. He can be braggadocious about these things. But first, when he was losing in MMA, he couldn't really talk. And he didn't have a voice. People didn't know who he was.
Yeah.
Even though he was an Olympic champion, he didn't get the respect that he deserved because he was losing his fights.
I
Now he
think
just
I
tells
think
everyone
it's
he's an
like
Olympic champion.
the whole thing. It's
Mhm.
basically about being well rounded, and just in general, it's like not even. It's like a lot of people choose to be one dimensional sometimes, right? And it's not
Mhm.
even just with MMA. Like a lot of the
Mhm.
time, it's like with life in general. Like
Mhm.
so, like focused on one thing that they are just able to do anything else outside of that.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
just find that to be very strange. It's like so you're choosing to be good at one thing, but horrible at everything else.
See, the reason why Samba works is because they do folk style wrestling, freestyle wrestling, judo, and they have strikes in their game. Sambo's
Yeah,
not just wrestling. So that's
yeah,
what
no,
Sambo's very. It's an MMA style. The style is MMA pretty much. When you're
yeah.
talking about Samba, you have all these.
It's like a precursor in a way to MMA.
That's why it works. That's what now someone like Bo Nickel, NCAA three-time Division One folk style champion. Now, folk style is simply singles and doubles, and you can't even slam people on the mat. You got to be careful when you land with them. So folk style is very careful compared to freestyle wrestling. Like Hamza Chimaev hasn't even let up 1 point in his wrestling career. In Sweden, he's from Chechnya, which even has a deeper culture in wrestling, and so that's where he's from. Um, I just heard Joakim Buckley talk about beating GSP if he was in his prime. I had a chuckle at it because he said that, don't get me wrong, I respect GSP, and he's the guy that inspired me to fight because he showed us that you have to be well-rounded, and that's just to like cater to your point right now. That makes a lot of sense because GSP was one of the first guys that showed us it's
Yeah,
not about Kyokushin because his background was Kyokushin karate, but he said that the first time he learned wrestling, he got pinned a lot, he got taken down a lot. First time he learned jiu-jitsu, he got tapped out a lot, so he had to go through a big humbling process that I guess a lot of people aren't willing to do. Someone like Kevin
it's true.
Holland should be willing to go somewhere to get humbled maybe every day of the year before you get better, before you finally land a double leg takedown on someone who's a better wrestler than you in MMA, because that's very much possible. How is it that Dominic Cruz beat Uriah Faber in wrestling in MMA? Because it's MMA, it's a different sport. And
Yeah, the dynamic is just so
mhm,
different. It's like because the
mhm,
wrestling setup, like you can't just use collar ties, right? And it's like snap downs. Like I mean,
mhm,
like it's very hard to apply that when someone's punching you in the face or kicking you,
mhm,
right? So it's like
mhm.
you really
Yeah,
have to
you're
change
right.
the setup. Like it's just and the distance is so much different. Like if you notice, one thing I've actually noticed is that and if you notice this in grappling martial arts, right? Before they compete, they start off very close to each other, right?
Mhm,
And
mhm,
in striking, before they compete, they get them across from one
mhm,
another distance,
mhm.
right? And in MMA, what do? They don't start this close. They start off
Yeah,
from distance, right? So
yeah,
it's like in a way, like you're starting off from a striking range, and
you
you
are.
can't really and you can't really use that wrestling setup, like not
No,
entirely at least. And it's like you have to
no,
change it up. Like you have to use your striking to set up your wrestling, and vice versa,
because
right?
Because if you can do that, then you're in the wrong sport, I would say.
Yeah,
Ben
yeah,
Askren came in. There's nothing wrong with Ben Askren. He came in at a later age. He had 2 hip surgeries and replacements already. I'm not knocking him in any sense.
yeah.
Um, I even texted him and trained with him, but he said he only takes high schoolers. So I think I still have his number, but because he
Oh,
gives it
really?
out on
Okay.
his website, and it's on for the public anyway. So
Oh,
yeah.
okay. I was gonna say.
No, the night he got knocked out by Masvidal, I actually sent him a WhatsApp message and he left me on red. I just said good luck, and because wrestler, and I respect that, and I wasn't really a Masvidal fan back then as much as I am now, or was. So,
My,
um,
like it's like my problem with Ben Askren is I remember watching him on the GSP. I mean, the Joe Rogan
Mm-hmm.
podcast, right?
Mm-hmm.
He
Okay.
was he was acting like he was GSP, like he was just well rounded. And like honestly, I didn't watch any clips of him, so I kind of did believe him, right? I was like, oh, he
Oh,
must
okay.
be well rounded, right? He must be well
Yeah.
rounded. And
Yeah.
then I saw him striking, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
the dude is like tapping so hard, like it's
Mm-hmm.
like
Got away
bro.
with it for a
I was
while.
like, I was like, bro, like with all due, I mean, recently we saw him get knocked out by Jake Paul, and honestly, I wasn't even surprised because I was like,
Mm-hmm.
forget about the name Jake Paul. Like, it doesn't matter what you feel about him
Yeah,
as a person.
he trains, dude. He's a
It's
pro
like,
fighter.
I mean, it's like, okay, who's gonna win? Like someone who trains in boxing for like the past like 2 to 3 years, or just some MMA fighter who barely knows how to strike. Like
And,
it's like so obvious, and people were just getting mad
yes.
at him, right? It's like, I mean, I had Jake Paul winning that fight anyways, because it's like it's so
Mm-hmm.
obvious because
Mm-hmm.
people were too emotionally invested with their hatred towards him that
I
they couldn't
was.
see.
I'm not gonna lie. MMA fan, wrestling fan. Not really a Ben Askren fan, but an anti Jake Paul fan, if you will, or at least that's what people were making me feel like back then when this was happening. So I was really high on Ben Askren, hoping that he could show us something, and
Yeah,
I was
I
really
mean,
riding
it's
the
like
wave.
one thing to hope though, and then it's like
Hmm.
because there are fighters that
You got to be realistic.
like I like them, right? But like I know
Hmm.
that they probably won't win just because
Hmm.
stylistically or whatever.
Yeah.
Just like the other
So
guys.
that's very interesting. When you get asked who do you think is going to win, Peter Yan or Sean O'Malley, now it's like who do I want to win? Who do I think is going to win? It's like
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
Khabib, I mean Islam and Oliveira is the same thing. It's like you have to look at it from both aspects. I like that. I agree with what you're saying. Excuse me.
Yeah, no, that's true. Because it's like, of course, there are fighters that I like, just maybe because of their personality. But
Mm-hmm.
when you're locked in the cage, your personality doesn't really matter as much.
That's true.
Like, right?
That's
It's
true.
your fighting ability that'll take you and like help you
Yeah.
succeed more so than just your ability to have a
Character
good
outside of it.
charismatic personality. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, this is obviously some of the flaws. I guess, like, emotions can blind a person, but it's like, I just find that to be kind of comedic in a way, you know? But it's
Yeah.
like, at the same time, it's understandable, but you shouldn't be that blinded by emotions to see, what's actually will happen or, you know what I mean?
I agree. I think Ben Askren got away with his wrestling credentials for a long time in Asia, and Asia is a place where they don't practice obviously a lot of
Yeah,
folk style wrestling.
that's
They have
true.
their own version of it. They have judo maybe. They have trips and things like that. But when it comes to
But it's a very foreign concept, right? Like, that's why he
exactly.
was kind of getting away with it. It's kind of like,
Hmm.
I mean, they have very good strikers though. Like obviously they have a lot of Muay
But that
Thai.
that's why it was working out for him because
Yeah,
it doesn't matter how good of a striker. You could be Anderson Silva level striker, but if you're Ben Askren, you only have one game plan, and it doesn't really matter how good of a striker you are. Then now, if those strikers were even 1/5 or 1/10 of the wrestler that Ben Askren was, you might just see a different fight every time he fought in one or Bellator or
that's true.
anywhere before the UFC. If they even have 1/10 of the credentials of Ben Askren in wrestling, because that's
That's
how
true.
he got away with it, And
So before we end off, do you feel like you have anything you want to say before we close off?
um, yeah, sure. I started training in 2017. I was still 22 years old, and when I walked into MTC, October, so it marks 5 years now for me. I've been training in the sport and wrestling since I was 13 years old in high school, 27 today. And as you know, I fought 3 months ago, 4 months ago. My first MMA amateur fight. I
Oh,
lost
nice.
a close decision, and I'm just looking go back sometime soon. In the meantime, maybe do another jiu-jitsu tournament and some striking matches first. And yeah, just want to get back on it and willing to train with you as well when you come here. And
Inshallah, yeah, no, I'm down for sure.
yeah, inshallah, I think it'll be great, be really fun. And I just wanna find where I can fit in. There's so many gyms and outlets and so many places you can go to train, but are they really for me? That's what you have to kind of figure out. And you usually have to go somewhere where they can cater to your needs. I know who I am. I'm a wrestler. I'm not going to go to you so you can change my style. And it's not to say that I'm only going to wrestle, but I need striking. I need such
You want
striking
someone that can
capabilities.
add to you rather than take away.
I need contributions. I don't need nobody making deals with me, transactions with me, taking me from myself. No, I need to keep me to myself. I belong to myself. I need to hold on to myself. You should contribute into my life or just stay away. And that's like sort of the dilemma I guess I'm facing when it comes to some of these like quote unquote coaches and like teams, is that everyone has their own style. This is a striking gym. This is a granted that they all do MMA, but they're more focused on one thing. Like you said, it's all about that balance. You are gonna have like a 60% maybe or more, give or take, percentage. You are going to lead towards a certain style more than the other. That's fine.
Yeah, it's true.
But yeah, I'm just like in the process of I go to an all jiu-jitsu gym, and I plan to go to Valley Flow Striking because I just want to get in there with their striking program. So that's like an all striking program. I'm doing an all grappling program, and yeah, I just need some good sparring grounds for MMA. I think that should
Oh,
be
I
it for
like that.
me.
I
Yeah,
like
I'm just
that.
trying to keep it simple. There's no secrets. There's no secret recipes. There's no like nothing needs to be low key. It's like I know what I'm doing. You need grappling, you need striking, and you need to put it together. And I think that's what MMA is pretty much.
I like that. And I wish you the best on your journey. Like honestly.
Yeah, appreciate you, brother.
But I guess I'll just end it off by saying, I like how much you have evolved as a person as well. And I feel like, since we first met and like
hmm
today, I feel like we both have evolved a lot as people.
hmm hmm Yeah, yeah.
And I hope we continue to evolve as as better people. You know what I mean?
God willing,
Not
brother.
just
If
as
we're if we're
artists, but as people as well.
exactly, because the better person you are, it'll reflect as you it'll show in your martial arts,
It's true.
and vice versa too. So
It's
I
an
think everything's
expression.
interconnected. Everything's very much interconnected. You can't be a gentleman here, but like a jerk outside, and you can't be a jerk outside, but a gentleman here. I think you need um, to just be the same person everywhere, and yeah. Um, as long as I feel like inner directed, we're looking within ourselves at all times, and the room for growth is always there. It's always there. But the moment we look outside, judging, or like, it's his problem, it's not my fault. How could it be my fault? No, it can never
It's
be my fault.
probably yeah. It's best to I guess like just focus on yourself rather
That's what you
than
got to do.
the
That
other
and
person.
hold yourself accountable. I believe in self accountability. You're not gonna die. You could be humble. You're not gonna die by swallowing your pride. Nobody's ever died by swallowing their pride.
It's
And I
true.
guess I would make
And I
that my
hope
final statement.
everyone that watches this is able to have some self accountability.
Mhm.
But
Yeah,
until next
yeah.
time.
Till next
And
time.
that's
Yeah.
until next time though. Like please like and share and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And I hope you all have a great day.
Yep. Likewise.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.